Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to Vesta Divorce. You are in the right place if you are looking for our webinar on co-parenting through the holidays. Welcome. We're going to give it just a few minutes to let everybody log on. A few housekeeping items while we're waiting for everybody to log in. We have disabled the chat on the Zoom call. If you have questions, we encourage you to ask in the Q&A. You'll see that at the bottom of your screen. Feel free to ask as many questions as you like. We're all here to help answer. We may answer the question live if we feel like it's something that everybody might want to hear. It is anonymous. Nobody will see your names except for the panelists. And we won't share your name if we do share your question. So again, Q&A at the bottom of your screen. Chat has been disabled. You will also see a poll. We encourage you to fill that out for us. Again, it is anonymous. It's for the panelists to help us understand our audience tonight and to gear our presentations to who is in attendance. So we encourage you to fill that out for us as well. And we'll give it just another minute before we get started. All right, I think we're going to get right into it. Be mindful of your time. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Vesta. Tonight's webinar is on co-parenting through the holidays. My name is Renee Coleman, and I'm so glad to have you here with us. At Vesta, our mission is to provide education, connection, and support to help you navigate the divorce process with some clarity and confidence. We just celebrated our 13th year in existence. The three founders of Vesta, wanted a better experience for those going through divorce. Today's session is focused on co-parenting through the holidays and what happens during and post-divorce, a topic that can feel overwhelming, but we've got some great panelists tonight to help you walk through that and hopefully help you with some peace of mind. Again, the chat has been disabled, but please feel free to ask as many questions as you like in the Q&A, and we will answer them throughout the webinar. And again, it's all anonymous. Nobody will see your name. So we're going to get started with some brief introductions. My name is Renee Coleman. I'm a residential mortgage lender. I am also the owner of Divorce Mortgage Planning of New England, and I've been a part of Vesta now for about 5 years. And I too went through my own divorce. I wish there was this type of resource available back then. So I'm happy to be here and happy to help. I am going to pass it over to Kate.
Find my mute button. Hi, everyone. I'm Kate Blake. I am a family law attorney. I'm licensed in Massachusetts and New Hampshire. You are in the New Hampshire Hub. So if I talk about something that is really specific to the law, that will be New Hampshire related. I do know that we have some people from other states, not even Massachusetts, but other states beyond that. So some of what I will be talking about with respect to parenting is not necessarily jurisdiction specific. So I will just keep everybody aware of that as we go through. My practice encompasses helping people both out of court through mediation, collaborative law, direct attorney negotiation, and then a component of my practice is also litigation. Feel free to throw questions, as Renee mentioned, into the Q&A, and I will be happy to answer those as they come up.
Awesome. And next up, Laura.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Laura Gamache. I am a real estate broker licensed in New Hampshire and Massachusetts. I work very closely at various stages with a lot of my clients going through divorces and they leading up to it, through it, and what we need to do with a lot of the time, the largest asset, their home. So I'm here for any and all questions. And also if you are in another state and you have some real estate questions, I have connections and colleagues that I work with throughout the country. So happy to kind of mix any referrals. Thanks everyone for being here.
Thanks, Laura. Next up, Rachel.
Hi, everybody. I'm Rachel V. Carolus. I'm a certified financial planner and a certified divorce financial analyst at North Star Financial Planning here in Southern New Hampshire. We work with a lot of clients in both New Hampshire and Massachusetts, but also virtually throughout the country. And we work with clients both pre-divorce as they're going through the negotiation stage and helping make some decisions along with their attorney, and also post-divorce once they have the settlement and helping them make all of those decisions as they navigate that big financial transition. So I'm excited to be here tonight.
Thank you, Rachel. And before I get to our last presenter tonight, I just wanted to mention Mandy, who is our concierge. She has posted in the chat for you some information on our concierge team. They will be reaching out to you starting tomorrow in the next few days after tonight's webinar to check in with you and see if she's your point of contact if you'd like to be connected with any of us. So I just wanted to be sure to mention that. And I'm going to hand it over to Michelle, who is our first presenter tonight.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Michelle Papandrea. I'm a certified divorce coach. I work with men and women, supporting them pre, during, and post-divorce. As a coach, I'm your thinking partner, your sounding board. I'm here to help you make the best decisions for yourself and your family. Divorce involves legal, financial, and emotional, as we've all talked about already today. In coaching session, we focus a lot on the emotional piece, and together we would set goals for your present and for your future. We work on how to communicate with your ex-spouse or your spouse if you're still living together, or how to tell your family. And we prepare and get you organized to work with your lawyer, mediator, financial person. And I'm also here to get you linked up with any and all of the right resources that you might need specific to your situation. Specifically tonight, we're talking about co-parenting in the holidays, which can be a really tough time for everyone involved. And so we're going to provide you with some information to help set you guys up for hopefully a calmer, brighter holiday season that's coming up. I'm going to start off talking more about people who already have temporary or final divorce agreements or parenting agreements. So one of the first things you want to do is check your agreements, check that holiday schedule, see what it's going to say, see what it says. I'm sorry, because you did agree upon it, and check it early. I am going to talk a little bit about Halloween coming up because it is 2 weeks away. So it's a perfect time or less than 2 weeks away, to really take a look at it. Follow that schedule closely to avoid any confusion. If you find anything that looks vague, communicate as early as possible and directly and respectfully as possible with your ex-spouse. And keep the conversations focused on the kids and the logistics of the holidays and transitions and how things are going to work. Things you might want to confirm or consider. So, for instance, who has the child or children on specific days, on the specific holidays? It could fall on one of your non-parent days. Do you need to change the schedule to accommodate the holiday by switching days, or whatever that might be, dropping off or picking up at different places at different times? Taking into consideration any travel time or distance. If you're heading to a family, it may typically be a 10-minute drive from one home to the other. And in this case, you might be at a grandparent's house and you want to consider everything like that. It could be a school schedule, if they're getting out early, if they have vacation or the day off, and really looking into everything that's coming up and who's doing what, where will everybody be. Try to present a united front. It's really, your family at this point is what I like to call a restructured family, hopefully, where you're still the parents and you can, like it says here, don't put your children in the middle or try to compete for their affection. Reassure them it's okay to enjoy the holidays with both parents. Set a budget, create a realistic holiday budget to avoid spending. And there were some pre-questions that we can address, but I wrote in here, you can only control yourself. We can't control other people in our family, our ex-spouse. I know sometimes one of the parents wants to buy more presents or try to spend more time, but you can only control yourself, how you show up, how you represent yourself in front of your children, your family, how you communicate, and being a little bit flexible. This is a great time to look at the traditions you've always had. Involve your children. What traditions did they like, which maybe didn't they like, which might you want to tweak. Their input can help you make decisions and determine which traditions you want to keep or change. Maybe create new traditions. This is a great chance to start fresh. You could have a movie night. You could do like a baking session on a separate day, shopping, volunteering. I'll tell you, in my situation, my son always went to as a family, we always went to my in-laws on Christmas Eve day. So what I started was movie night. I would pick him up and we would go to the movies at 6 o'clock. So that was a new tradition I introduced on one of my holidays. Let go of what no longer serves you. If a tradition is too painful or not realistic anymore, it's okay to let it go. Allow yourself to do things differently. Like I said before, make a plan ahead, start getting ready weeks in advance, really look at your schedule and communicate with your spouse, ex-spouse. But don't let the holidays sneak up on you. It is going to come. Unfortunately, we can't avoid them sometime. Let's see, communicate with your kids also. So I'm going to use Thanksgiving as an example. Maybe there's a Thanksgiving Eve that you do or that you're creating, and then there's a Thanksgiving Day. Maybe Thanksgiving Day is split in two. It's also usually a long weekend. The kids are out of school. Really communicate with the kids what to expect, if the schedule's changing for them, and know where they're going to be and at what point they're going to be there. Sometimes that helps eliminate or lessen the anxiety they may have. Don't give in to the temptation to buy love or to try to one-up the other parent. Be flexible. You may have to have a plan B or maybe even a plan C. Maybe there's traffic, there's weather, there's something falls through, somebody has to go to work. So try to be a little flexible when possible. And just another little thing is a lot of people, especially if divorce is new or you're in the middle and people know, they might ask you, how are you doing? Or ask you certain questions, right? And sometimes it's nice to prep yourself and create something like I have here. Thank you for asking about me. I'm doing okay and doing what I need to do to take care of myself and move forward. And then maybe turn around and ask them a question. I don't know. How's your dog? So you answered and now you're deflecting. When you don't have the kids on a particular day or time during the holidays, that can be really sad, lonely, but schedule time for yourself. This is a great time to do things you never get a chance to do or you always wanted to do. Block time out for self-care. Buy yourself something and really enjoy it. Even if it's like a heated blanket for the couch and a good book, like that sounds like a great day to me. Make plans with family and friends, attend events, accept event invitations to gatherings. Maybe you always said no, now you can say yes. Start a new tradition for yourself. It could be baking, could be going to Thanksgiving. People always have those exercise classes Thanksgiving morning. That might be a new tradition for yourself. Encourage your kids to enjoy their holiday, that you have other plans and that you will be okay. Sometimes the kids stress out about leaving one of the parents home alone. And it's okay to be vulnerable, to talk to your friends and family. Tell them what your plans are. You don't have the kids, but you have other plans or what you'll be doing, and ask for support and be kind to yourself. Be generous with yourself. And maybe this is a good time to schedule a meeting with a coach or your therapist. Emotions. So as we get closer and closer to the holidays, a lot of emotions start to come up. Anxiety, anger, sadness, resentment, disappointment, fear, loneliness, and grief are just some examples. So check in with yourself daily, a couple times a day. What time of day is a little harder? Do you need to maybe schedule something for yourself, like after work or after the kids get home? Schedule an exercise class or go get your nails done or whatever it might be. But check in with yourself. You may feel different day to day, hour to hour. Maybe identify what's triggering the feelings today or at 5 o'clock versus 8 o'clock this morning. And allow yourself to feel what you're and any others that you have. Allow yourself to grieve. You most likely will feel some type of grief. this is a time. Maybe you're at your parent as you've always been, and now maybe children aren't there for that particular. Find something that you enjoy: meditation, journaling, exercising, going for a walk, taking the dog for a walk, hiking. And again, just be vulnerable and talk to people. It's okay to share how you feel. All right. Because we're about to start to get into creating plans, I thought I'd throw out there a lot of the holidays and days off that generally go into a plan, and Kate will go over that in a couple of minutes. But things to consider: school days off, including maybe even when the kids get sick, who picks up the kids or stays home from work with the kids, school vacations, all of the secondary holidays. If you get the day off, maybe in the plan, you say, those days that I have off, I'll take the kids. Obviously, Memorial Day, 4th of July, Labor Day, the whole weekend potentially, and then how it works when it may not have been your weekend and rescheduling the rest of the week. Parents' birthdays, children's birthdays, Mother's Day, Father's Day, religious holidays, and then any other special days that your family or yourself may celebrate. Maybe you always celebrate your parents' anniversary, and that's a special day, and you want to make sure that you can have the kids that day. So earlier I said I wanted to talk a little bit about how to think through the holidays and things you might not think of. So in this example, it's Halloween, something I hadn't really considered. I think at the time I didn't need to consider it for myself, but with it being 2 weeks away, in your mind, you might be like, oh, I always buy the costume and I always get them dressed and I always take them trick-or-treating. And now all of a sudden it might be a couple days away and you realize it's not your night, or maybe you do, because this year it's on a Friday. Maybe your transition time is 6:00, right in the middle of trick-or-treating, assuming trick-or-treating starts at 5 where you are. How do you switch that? If you just are doing the trick-or-treating, will you have the overnight? How to do all those transitions? And are there any alternate options? Maybe one of your children is a little younger and one's a little older. They have separate friends, and one of you can take the younger and one can take the older. Obviously, as they get a little older, they walk around the neighborhood with their friends. Alternate years, who has the kids to take trick-or-treating, and any of the alternate options: school parties, other Halloween parties, that one parent can attend those and the other one can take them trick-or-treating. Let's see. So now it's, how does custody affect your holiday plan? So if you are currently in the process of divorce, it's important to discuss a holiday timeshare that works best for you and your family. Take into consideration stability for the children. Like I alluded to earlier, we as a family, we always went somewhere on Christmas Eve and the other families on Christmas Day, and we kept it that way. Not that you have to do it that way, just putting out an example there, and created some new traditions around that. But stability, put your kids' needs above yours. If they're used to going somewhere, maybe you keep that stability for them. Again, travel time and distance. If you're splitting Thanksgiving and you're having like a meal at noon and a meal at 6, be very specific, not just, oh, we'll switch midday. That can become a little vague and confusing. Again, school schedules, traditions, and the ages. Some other options when you're making plans, or if you're already in the middle of it and you have holidays coming up, say where you open presents, depending on the situation and the interactions, is there an opportunity, even, for example, Christmas morning, for everyone to be at one house and open presents? Is there an opportunity for you and your ex-spouse to go in on a present together? Maybe create a new tradition of just your family so that you can sit down and the kids can spend time with both parents. And so Kate is going to start talking about how to create a custody arrangement.
Thanks, Michelle. Our mediator, Crystal, could not be here tonight, and so usually she will talk about mediation and the benefits to mediation. So I will mention that as well as I go through my material. as somebody who does both work out of court through mediation and collaborative law as well as in court, I cannot stress enough how much more control and flexibility and creativity you can have when you are in an out of court process with holidays and parenting plans. You know your family, you know your children better than your attorney ever will, better than your judge ever will. And to the extent that you and your co-parent can reach an agreement on parenting and holidays and vacations, the better for everyone involved. The reality is that judges just do not have the time or the attention to really create a lot of the details that Michelle was talking about that are important for children. A lot of times judges just do a cookie cutter approach, and what you might put into an agreement, what you might put into a written agreement, that could be 3 or 4 pages of holidays, you might get half a page from a judge. They are just not going to focus on these things the way that may be important to you. So what I do want to say, and that was generic across the board, I think that would apply to any jurisdiction that you're in. New Hampshire specifically, I want to explain that there is a court form, it's called a parenting plan, that lists out, it's a form that has a lot of check boxes, but then it also has blank lines for you to fill in what you've agreed to. And if you ultimately can't reach an agreement, you can put together a proposed parenting plan that you can submit to the judge for them to ultimately make a decision. But this parenting plan that is from the court's forms, has a lot of language in there about different holidays and different options. But I want to go over different ways that you can be approaching this. So when we think about the different holidays, I often start with what is important to you and what is important to your family, because sometimes I have people who say, I don't care about 4th of July, or I don't care about Christmas. It's just a day I will celebrate as long as I get some time with them around the holidays. Other people, it is very important to them that their children spend time with them on Christmas Day. Or sometimes people say, my family's always celebrated Christmas Eve, and my co-parents' family always celebrated Christmas Day, which that's fantastic. That makes it much easier. So identifying what holidays and vacations are important is the first step. And then when you look at these different holidays and vacations, the way to, you have to first define what is that period of time. So for instance, when we talk about Thanksgiving, are we just talking about the day, or are we talking about the day before when kids get out of school on Wednesday to some point on Thursday or some point on Friday? Or are we talking about the entirety of their vacation from school? So release of school on Wednesday to return to school on Monday. And then once we've defined that period, how are we dividing it? And the way we usually do it is either alternating, meaning one year one parent gets the holiday or the vacation period, and then the next year the other parent gets that. Or is it we're actually going to divide the day? So with something like Thanksgiving, you're looking at that day and then figuring out what is a midpoint in which to exchange the children. As Michelle mentioned, it's important to think about, where are you traveling to? How far away do you have family? I sometimes have clients say, I don't have any family locally. So when I celebrate Thanksgiving, I need to be able to travel out of state upwards of 5 hours to visit with my family. So maybe in that instance, it makes sense for the families to be alternating on an annual basis. I will tell you that Christmas, and this is my experience in Massachusetts and New Hampshire, and I would imagine probably every other state would be the same. Christmas tends to be sacrosanct. If a parent wants parenting time on Christmas, they are most likely going to be able to get that. So I often find that Christmas tends to be like a 24-hour period where one person gets maybe noon on Christmas Eve to noon on Christmas Day, and then the other parent gets noon on Christmas Day to December 26th at noon. So it's 2 24-hour periods. And then the next year we flip which parent has the Christmas Eve overnight into Christmas Day. What's important to think about with respect to Christmas is that if you have school-aged children, they are most likely going to have a lengthier block of time out of school. Sometimes, and that often, the length of time, it's not like a April vacation or a February vacation where it's a week. That block of time over the Christmas and New Year holiday can sometimes be as short as a week, but sometimes, I know last year was as long as about a week and a half. So the question then becomes like, how are we dividing the remainder of that time? Are we going to, and options are we going to have to continue to have the same routine schedule, but for those holidays? And also, is New Year's part of that? Are we going to divide that? And then think about how you're dividing that and how that works with Christmas. Does this mean that these kids are going to be ping-ponging back and forth between homes over a period of time? And does that really make sense? And then Hanukkah may also fall during this period. And I know it sometimes people want to make sure that they have parenting time over the Hanukkah period. What is also very important with respect to any holiday or vacation is that there is clear language in your agreement about when the exchange time is going to be. I think Michelle mentioned this, but it can't just be midpoint on this date. It should be things like noon or 7 p.m. or identifying it so that you're not creating issues down the road. Can you move to the next slide, please? Thank you. So when you get divorced, or if you were never married, you need to have these parenting plans to get to a final judgment. But then there may become issues in the future with what it is that you've agreed to, and it may be appropriate for you to revisit the parenting plan. Again, this specific part that I'm going to mention now is specific to New Hampshire. So that parenting plan that I mentioned from the court in New Hampshire, there is also a section where you and your co-parent need to identify how often you are going to revisit the parenting plan. It's very common for people to say, we'll revisit it whenever we feel like the need arises, which can be difficult because there's no mandatory requirement about when you're going to revisit that plan. Sometimes we put it on a set schedule on an annual basis, every other year, every 3 years, because if you enter into a parenting plan when you have young kids, maybe 1, 2, 3 years old, they're not school age, and now 5 years have passed, they're tied to a school system, and their needs are different. So you may need to address parenting changes to the parenting plan and the vacation and holiday schedule. So if you need to reach an agreement, or you need to change it, then you may have to end up in the court system. New Hampshire is a big proponent of mediation. If you are in the middle of divorce, you may have been encouraged to go to mediation. They really want people to try and settle these issues outside of court, especially because, as I started this presentation, they don't know your children. They don't know what's best for them. So if you can reach an agreement, that is much better. There is also a professional called a parenting coordinator. I like parenting coordinators for certain cases. Sometimes I think it can be a continuation of the litigation process, but the idea behind the parenting coordinator is that you and your co-parent have agreed to use either somebody who has a mental health background and works in the field of divorce, or an attorney like myself, and you are essentially agreeing that this person usually in the first instance is going to try and mediate any disputes between the two of you about parenting issues. And then if they are not able to help you reach an agreement, they then have the authority to make a decision. So my classic example of where a parenting coordinator might be helpful is you have a family wedding coming up, and which you have no control over when that's going to happen. And it happens to fall on your co-parent's weekend, and they are just being a jerk and refusing to let you swap weekends or have parenting time so that your child can go to this family wedding. You are not going to get into court fast on that issue. I don't care if it's Massachusetts, New Hampshire, or any other state. That is not something that a court is going to deem an emergency. And if you are already divorced, that is not something that you're going to be able to modify your agreement on. So the parenting coordinator is there to help settle that dispute and make a decision so that you can hopefully go to that wedding. So a parenting coordinator is really there to help with post-divorce issues and also to settle any issues that you may not be able to get into court on. And also some of those smaller issues, and I don't mean smaller in the event that they're not meaningful to you, but smaller in that judges they don't care about these smaller picture items, things that are important and meaningful to you. They don't care about. They're more concerned about big picture issues. So I think sometimes a parent coordinator can be very helpful. With respect to somebody not complying with your clear order, so once you have a parenting plan in place that gets approved by the court, that becomes a court order. And if somebody does not comply with that, they fail to exchange when they're supposed to, or they're not complying with the terms of it, then you have what's called a contempt action with the court, where you file with the court to say, this is what they agreed to do. They have not done that. Please find them in contempt of court for failing to do that. Now, the unfortunate reality about a contempt action with respect to holidays is that you don't have a preemptive contempt. So you can't actually file that contempt until the action has occurred. So if they're refusing to turn over the children for, let's say, Halloween, and they're saying, I'm not following what we agreed to on Halloween, you unfortunately now have to wait 2 weeks until Halloween passes, and then you file, and then you've lost out on the time with your children, which is unfortunate, but that's the way the court system works. Next slide, please. Okay. At this point, I am turning this over to Rachel.
Great. Thanks, Kate. So a lot of financial considerations throughout the holidays, whether you're in the middle of your divorce, have just started the process, or have recently finalized and are navigating holidays for the first time post-divorce. As you can all imagine, lots of increased expenses, right? So we've got gifts to consider, travel, entertaining, decorations, potentially at 2 different homes, double the family gatherings, all of these things. A lot of what Michelle said about trying to figure out what your new traditions are, what's that going to look like from a cost perspective. And just to echo what everyone has said already, the key to success here is really planning ahead and communicating, right? Now's a good time to start thinking about, what is my realistic spending plan throughout the holiday season? What does that look like, either on your own or with the help of a financial advisor, especially if you have separated finances and are doing this for the first time on your own? It's good to just put pen to paper and figure out what is going to work within your budget to be able to spend on these expenses. Some tips for this are trying to delineate between what are the needs and what are the wants, which is going to look different for everybody. But I love the suggestion earlier to carve out those new traditions and let go of what's no longer serving you. Part of the planning ahead is being very clear on who's going to pay for what am I personally responsible for within my spending and my means. And also, if this is the first time you're navigating this, I think just acknowledging that what things look like this year doesn't have to represent what, the new normal is for the long term. So if you're very much in the middle of a transition, if something can't happen financially this year, give yourself some grace and know that maybe it's a goal we can work towards in future years. One of the biggest expenses, I guess, for children, again, communicating, super important. I find clients have a lot of success when they are just upfront with discussing those expectations with the kids. Hey, this is going to look different. But to reiterate Michelle's points of getting them excited, getting them on board, and will just make things go smoothly. One thing I've seen a lot of success with is creating a holiday spending agreement. This is obviously very informal, but with your co-parent can help avoid some confusion and some resentment potentially. Some examples of what can go on a holiday spending agreement are things like, okay, we are going to split all presents. We're going to spend X and we're just going to split it in some 50-50 or some other way. Or, hey, the kids are at my house. I'm going to pay for the gifts at my house. You pay for yours. And we each deal with our own. One kind of question, I know Kate was talking a lot about how Christmas Day is typically split in a co-parenting situation. If that's not the case, it can be a question of, well, do all the gifts go where the child goes, especially if you're traveling? Typically, I see that parents want their kids to open, even if it means waiting, open their gifts when they're with them. All this to say, if you have a plan and spend the time of creating the plan, stick with the plan as much as you can. I know it can be very easy to fall into the trap of emotionally spending, especially in the middle of a divorce. However, it's just going to add to some post-holiday regret. And like I said, potential resentment. If you have an agreement with the co-parent and someone blows the budget, it can bring up a lot of negative feelings. So we just want to avoid that if at all possible. And then some other year-end considerations. These are not holiday specific, but now still a good time to be forward thinking of, as it's already middle of October, the end of the year is going to be here before we know it. So some things to think about. If you're in the middle of your divorce, it's important to know your marital status on December 31st is what determines your entire year's tax filing status. So that means if your divorce was finalized any day of 2025 before December 31st, you are considered single for the 2025 tax year. So you'll either be filing single or head of household, depending on dependent status. If it is not officially finalized on December 31st, so if you are still legally married at the end of the year, you will be filing a joint tax return, which there are several. There's married filing jointly and married filing separately. So it's good to talk with a tax preparer as to what may be your best option there. Another thing to think about is healthcare coverage. As we're wrapping up the end of the year, what is the plan for healthcare coverage now and into the new year? So what transitions we have ahead? What are our options? What's in the agreements as far as COBRA coverage or which spouse is covering the kids? Do you need to go on Marketplace? So find a health insurance broker that can help you navigate what plans make the most sense for you. They can get very busy this time of year with Medicare changes. Start to think about, do I need to get those plans in place? Another year-end deadline, if you have any funds in an FSA or flexible spending account, those do need to be used up, use it or lose it before the end of the year. Just important to note, this is different than a health savings account or an HSA, which is more popular now. Those do not have to be used before the end of the year. So those funds will roll over into 2026. And thinking about year-end, we're often talking about charitable donations or gifting that is likely put on pause while finalizing a divorce. And if your divorce is finalized and you're navigating the new normal, that may or may not be a priority for you right now. So again, that could be a longer-term decision to be thinking about. And a very best practice that I see with my clients, especially if the divorce is not been finalized by the end of the year, is to try to get a snapshot of the December 31st account values for any investment accounts, any bank accounts, mortgage statements. Some of these you have to wait till early January to get, but anything you can log in and grab a snapshot, a screenshot of the value, and just save for your record keeping can be very helpful down the road. And I think from here, we're going to hand it off to Laura.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rachel. Appreciate that. So just a couple little tips in terms for the home, and depending on the stages of whether the home is going to be going up for sale, are we doing that selling the home through the holidays, or are we just going to be in the home during the holidays, preparing that property for the next year for sale? Something that I just like to bring up, if you're going to be in the home and or selling, just make it your home still, right? You're still there. You're still living in the property. So it's just, you want to be able to still enjoy that property while you're still there, especially if it's going to be maybe your last holiday in that home. So to still make those kind of special traditions still occur. But first and foremost, I always suggest when you're whatever stage you are in the divorce, is just knowing any of your property's value, right? So if you just own a single family or if you have other investment properties, just knowing what those values are is just so beneficial for so many different reasons, right? Because I am pulled in the mix very early on normally. So, because they need to have those numbers when they're negotiating with their attorney, right? Just first and foremost, if you haven't had that done, have that market analysis done on the property so you know what that property is worth right now. And then discussions of kind of that market time. If it looks like at some point in the divorce, the actual property will be either selling or a party's going to be buying out, you're going to need to know what that property is worth. Like I mentioned, if you're decorating the home and it's going to be going up for the market, just keep that in mind. So you just decorate the home tastefully. If it's going to be, will be shown. Otherwise, if you're going to just be staying in the property during the winter time and perhaps can get more of the springtime, things that I'm really just advising clients right now is just preparing the property for the winter. And sometimes if some of these tasks maybe fell on your spouse, and sometimes now you have to realize what things were done and make sure that some of those maintenance items are done to the property, like irrigation. Have you blown the lines out? Right, we're in New England, we're getting cooler nights right now, right? Little things like the gutters, have you cleaned the gutters out? Right, we're going to be having snow come and we don't want to have ice dams. Have you serviced your heating system? That's going to be firing up. Mine has already, unfortunately. But so something that you need to make sure that all those items have been done as we're heading into the winter season, right? And little things like salt, right? We had a shortage or ran out. So just little tips and tricks, especially if you're going to be showing the property through the winter time, you need to make sure that you keep everything maintained and shoveled so you don't want anybody slipping and falling, etc. So just little things that you want to make sure that you're really making sure stay routinely done as we are heading into those months. And then we have a strategy, right? So for what the current situation is, right? So if we are going to be showing the property, right? So we're having just some target goals, or if we need to have the house ready so everyone has a job of what they need to do, you assign a child, right? You go and you're going to take this basket and you're going to throw everything and clean the living room for the toys and put it here, right? So everyone just has a kind of a task that needs to be done if in the event we are showing the property, right? But like I said, if that's not the case and we're just want the prep mode, then we're just, what do we need to do for maybe in-house jobs, right? To prepare for that, for the market of what we can do. And I'll touch a little bit more on that. And then next is just planning what those next steps look like, right? So if you're not staying in the home, or the other party is, or whomever, right? And you're going to be needing to look for housing. What's that next step going to look like for housing, right? You need to really have that forefront of, are you just going to be going into a rental? Are you going to be purchasing? Do you need to sell in order to buy? You're going to have a contingency. So just really sit down and really think of what those next steps look. Or you're just going to be doing something like some type of interim, and we just need like a free game plan just for a next year or two. And then you move on to what the next kind of more longer term looks like. So it's just really having those discussions and really seeing what needs to be done to kind of necessarily take those next steps and as smoothly as possible, but still making the home right and keeping those family traditions while you're there, because a lot of times those are just for the lasting memories before the properties actually will be sold. Moving on to the next slide, please, is just the transitioning during the holidays, right? So sometimes this is just a really good time. If you're decorating the home, right, you're going through, is just decluttering in general, right? So if you're putting decorations up, you need to move some stuff anyways, right? So taking this time just to really declutter the property. Obviously, decorations is not decluttering, get it. But however, those will come down at some point. So it's just really taking that time to really declutter, depersonalize if we're going to be thinking of getting that house ready for the market, right? So if you have a slew of family photos everywhere, obviously if they haven't come down already, sometimes we're just taking those down, we're swapping pictures out and just really preparing that property. That's the kind of the goal, is preparing for the market. Next is, a lot of the times, sometimes there's been some deferred maintenance on the house, right? Because the focus has been possibly just not on the house, but on the divorce and the family and the kids and transition and whatnot. So a lot of times we're just really looking at the property itself. And is there any kind of deferred maintenance that we need to really attend to prior to selling, and have a discussion, of course, of who's paying what, right? And documenting that as well. So if that needs to be a part of the kind of the divorce agreement, and kind of hashed out, so to say, when the property sells and who gets divvied out the funds and whatnot. So really making sure we focus on that deferred maintenance, because we run into that a lot of the times because the focus just hasn't been on that because of the divorce situation. Prepare for packing, right? So this is a great time. You're getting a lot of boxes coming in, Amazon boxes, et cetera, or whatnot. So just collect those boxes, right? So those are a good opportunity to use those, keep them, store them, or just be able to start slowly packing one room up at a time. Just it's crazy how long that can take. So if that the goal is going to be that, is just do it in slow stages, right? As we're going through the winter months, those are good kind of times if they're thinking for the next year or if we're doing it now. So just prepare for that packing and slowly start doing that. Also a good time, right, is to, as you're approaching the holidays and you're going to be having new gifts, new toys. It's really just going through anything that's unused, what hasn't been touched for a while, right? What clothes has been sitting in there that the kids have outgrown or yours or whatnot. So just a really good time to donate anything. There's a lot of good charities that are out there that are looking for some of obviously good quality donations for those charity programs. So a good opportunity to be able to do that. It cleans out your place and the house, but it also goes to a good cause for perhaps a family that is in need of any kind of toys or clothing and whatnot. Then lastly is just that year-end prep expenses, right? So what Rachel was chatting on, this is more just on the house front, right? So what's been done to the property that you need to start documenting as well for when you hit to that tax year, or having that kind of that conversation, like I mentioned before, of who's paying for what for getting anything for the property in terms of if we need to get some items done and paid for and need to get something painted, or we need to have to get this fixed, or just preparation for that if we're preparing that house for the markets. But so all in all, I'm going to transition from there over to Renee.
Thanks so much, Laura. So I'm going to talk a little bit about credit. So we're talking about co-parenting and year-end things and holidays and things to think about. So credit is going to be something that is crucial during the divorce process, and just being mindful of what credit's in your name, when the bills are due, and who's going to be paying them, right? You may not have been the financial person in your household, and that's okay. Everybody takes on a different role in the household. But going forward, you will be responsible for your own household. And so credit is one of those pieces that we need to make sure you're paying attention to. By talking with a lender early in the process, we can help you understand what your credit looks like today, what debts are in your name. Are you holding the debts individually? Are they joint debts? Are you an authorized user? Those are some of the things that you'll want to address in your final settlement agreement. So, understanding what those debts are, and then if there's any work to be done on your credit, we can help you with that and help you understand how to rebuild credit should it be necessary. Going into the holidays, I think probably everybody spends a little more than they intended to. So again, just be mindful of what you're charging, what you're putting on your cards, and who's making those payments and who's going to be responsible for those payments, whether it's pre-divorce or post-divorce. A couple of rules of thumb: by closing your credit, that's actually going to hurt your credit score. So just be careful. Talk with a lender to understand the implications of that. Again, if you're doing this pre-divorce and maybe you're going to be looking to either sell the house and buy another house, maybe you're going to keep the house and refinance it, or if you're going to be renting. Any of those scenarios are going to require that you have a good credit score. And so we can take a look at it and make sure that we're doing the right thing. Be careful not to close any accounts until you've talked to a lender to understand the implications. Make sure all of the debts are being paid on time. That's going to be a huge one, especially the mortgage. If there's a mortgage or a second mortgage, a HELOC, make sure that you understand who's going to be responsible for those debts and who's going to be making those payments if you're still in the middle of your divorce process. Because post-divorce, we want to make sure that there aren't any late payments, especially on a mortgage. Those really affect your credit score negatively. And the last rule of thumb is to keep your credit card balances below 30%. So if you have a credit card that has a $1,000 credit limit, keep the balance owed below 30%. So in this case, $300. I know a lot of people will try to consolidate cards and take the balances and move them over to one card. And it does make it much easier to manage it and pay attention to it. However, that will have an impact on your credit. So if you're maxing out cards, that really has a negative impact on your credit. So again, during the holidays, especially, we get wrapped up in the holiday itself and the kids, but try and focus a little bit on your credit score. So from a lender's perspective, when we're looking at credit, so we're not necessarily looking at how much you owe on something. So I don't care if you owe $20,000 on your credit card. What we're looking at is what's the minimum payment on that credit card. And the reason for that is something called DTI, debt to income ratio. And that's the biggest qualifier that a lender will use to qualify you for a mortgage. So that debt to income ratio, we're looking at your monthly debts and what those minimum payments are. So we get those right from your credit report. So, if there's a car payment for $300 and a credit card payment for $25, we're going to take those payments and add it to what the new mortgage is going to be. And then we divide that by your income. And that's how we come up with a ratio, your DTI, your debt to income ratios. So again, your credit is going to be super important and what those minimum payments look like. So again, if you have a higher credit card balance, then the monthly payment's going to increase as well. And lastly, the piece that I get asked most often, can we use child support and or alimony to qualify for a mortgage? And the short answer is yes. There are some rules around it, length of time that you have to receive it before we can use it as income, and then length of time that it continues. There's some rules about where the funds are deposited, how much is deposited. So again, talk with a lender early so you understand those options. And make sure you're doing the right things and try and prevent anything negative. Especially if we are pre-divorce settlement. So that's all I wanted to touch on tonight. The mortgage side of things doesn't necessarily come into play when we talk about co-parenting, but wanted to talk about those things as they relate to the holiday season and just being mindful of those debts. So we'll bring everybody back on. Oh, excuse me.
I wanted to, one of the things we didn't touch upon is nesting and co-parenting, which is, failed to bring that up. So nesting, if any of you have nesting, you're doing nesting, and especially if it's new. Nesting is where the kids stay in the home and the parents come in and out. Parents may share a different apartment. They may go to their parents, friends, but the parents come in and out of the house and the kids stay in the family home. And how does that look during the holidays? And I think it really looks very similar, except the kids are there. So they're spending all of the holiday in the house, hopefully. So I would arrange any of your holidays with yourself and the kids in the house. I think it's a great opportunity to start making your plans and that you can take into the future, even a good time to see how things work. Maybe it's a great time, someone touched upon, maybe it's your final year all in the house where you can do some of the holidays all together if that's an option. Like I said, maybe if you celebrate Christmas morning, whichever parent isn't in the home overnight might come in to celebrate Christmas morning together, whatever it might be. But I think that it's very similar, except that the parents are coming going from a house as opposed to the kids having multiple houses. But there's still the transition of if you not all going to the same place, saying for Thanksgiving coming up, and you're going to separate, do you just go with whoever's day it is, or do you go with starting a new holiday plan for the future?
Yep. So thank you, Michelle, for touching on that. So one of the questions that was submitted with the registrations, it made me think about, the question was looking for ideas for plans that work for people and what hasn't worked for people. And it just reminded me, so my divorce was many moons ago. I do remember it well. My first Christmas in my home with my kids, the kids had gone to bed. They were young. They were very young. And my neighbor came over just to say happy holidays. and knew that I had just recently gone through a divorce and asked if there was a gift under the tree from Santa to me. And I hadn't even thought about it. I was all set for the kids, but hadn't thought about it. And he was kind enough to, it was late, Christmas Eve. CVS was probably the only thing open. And he just picked up a few random things and brought them to me. So I wrapped them and put them under the tree from Santa to me. And it was one of those things that it hadn't even occurred to me. And it was 20 plus years ago, but I still remember it. There were some not so great things that didn't work out, but that was one of the things that sticks in my mind. So I just wanted to share that. Thank you for joining us and sticking it out through this last hour with us. As I mentioned earlier, our concierge will be reaching out to you in the next few days just to check in, see if you got any good information from tonight's webinar, but also if you'd like connections to any of us here on the panel. So Mandy and her team will be reaching out to you for that. Otherwise, we hope to see you at another one of our events. Feel free to check it out on vestadivorce.com. You can find lots of events throughout Massachusetts and New Hampshire. Thanks for joining us tonight. Have a good night, everyone.